For those of you I don't know, my name is Lindsay Gleason, and I work for the Community Foundation. I started back in April, and I'm our assistant director. Part of my role is to work with folks to put on these Third Thursday workshops every month. And these are specifically designed for nonprofit leaders, but everyone is welcome. And, you know, when we say the word leader, it can be positional leadership, but I think everyone has leadership capacity, so everyone is welcome. But even if you don't work in the nonprofit world, I think that there's often things that are useful. So please spread the word about our meetings, and we're just always happy to have folks and have good conversation. So a couple of housekeeping things. Please feel free to have your camera on or off, whatever you prefer. It might be handy in kind of the discussion section if you have a question to turn your camera on, but I know people have different things going on, so do what you prefer. We're also recording today, so if you don't want to be on camera, I totally understand. We also have captions available. They're automated, so they're going to have some funny things that they say, but they're pretty accurate. If you'd like to turn those off, you can do that at the bottom where it says more to live transcript. It says hide subtitle. We'll use those because it's an accessibility feature in case someone is deaf or hard of hearing, or perhaps is in a place where they can't have the sound on for some reason. So I think those are all my items. Just so you all know, for the rest of the year, I guess I do have one more item. We're not going to meet in November for Third Thursday, but we will have kind of an end of year celebration and planning session for next year's topics in December. And we will send out details about that soon. So we're really excited today to welcome Michael Stowe from Virginia Tech, where he can tell you a little bit more about himself, but he works with media every day. And I worked at Virginia Tech for a little over 8 years, and had the opportunity to work with Michael and a lot of great folks at Tech who are just you always learn something from Michael, and at the meetings that we would have for communicators. So I'm just really excited to have him here and to share his expertise. So I'll let him take it away from here. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. So I will, as Lindsay mentioned, I worked in media for a long time. I was with the Roanoke Times for many years and have a real affection for journalists and media. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you today on this topic. And at Virginia Tech, I work in central media relations and have the distinct privilege of getting up every day and thinking about how we can elevate Virginia Tech in the media and externally, and sort of to lift up the brand of Virginia Tech is one of my main tasks every day. So what's really cool about this session is that I think every one of you share a lot with the journalists that we're going to try to connect you with, because almost every person I know in journalism got into journalism because they wanted to make a difference. People don't go into journalism to make money. They don't go into it they go into it because they want to help their community. And that's what all of you do. So there's this common thread that links you back. And it's also why so many journalists, I think, end up working for nonprofits and things like that. So really happy to be here today. Virtual trainings are, I think we all know from 3 years of this, Zoom meetings and virtual trainings can be challenging to make the personal connection that I think is hard to do in these meetings. So I appreciate you all being here, and we're all going to get the most out of this by the conversation that we have, because I'm really not that interesting, and we're going to learn from each other a lot more than you're going to learn from just hearing me talk. So the first thing I would love to do is quickly go around and just do a quick intros. We have a great group. I'm always happy to have larger groups, but I love having groups of about this size because it makes for better conversation. So I'll prompt you by your name that I can see on Zoom, and it'll probably be the quickest way. So, and it's going to just go in the order that I see you. So I'll start with you, Laura.
I'm Laura Penn. I'm the admin and programs manager of the Community Foundation.
Thank you. And Jessica?
Morning, everybody. I'm Jessica Wergo, CEO of the Community Foundation.
Laureen?
Good morning. I'm Lorene Blakemore, the Director of Community Engagement for the YMCA at Virginia Tech.
Great. John?
I'm John Hopkins, Vice Chair of Sustain Floyd.
Super. Lee?
I'm Lee Spiegel, and I'm the Executive Director for Beans and Rice.
Great. Phil?
Hey, Phil Calicat, I'm Executive Director of Trades Training Initiative.
Linda?
Hi, Linda Jilk, and I'm with Literacy Volunteers of the New River Valley. I'm Program Coordinator, and I have the opportunity to work with our new director, Jenny Ayers, who couldn't be here today. And I've had the opportunity to be married to Michael for 27 years now. So he's helped me a lot with media relations at Literacy Volunteers.
So Linda's here. Also at my request, you'll see she's going to help us talk through a case study at the end that she worked on. So I appreciate that. Alex?
Good morning, I'm Alex Barge. I am the Director of Development and Marketing for Brain Injury Services of Southwest Virginia. We serve all of Southwest Virginia, parts of Central and parts of Southside.
Super. Melanie?
I apologize that my camera doesn't work when I'm on Zoom. It freezes up. So I am Melanie Morris. I am the Community Relations and Special Events Coordinator for the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Southwest Virginia.
Welcome, Melanie, and no apologies needed. Thank you. Andy?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Gillespie, Executive Director of NRV Cares, and I too have an unstable connection. So that's why I'm sans camera this morning.
Awesome. Teresa?
Good morning. I'm Teresa Martin. I'm the Director of Deposits at Virginia Community Capital, which is a statewide community development financial institution. And I'm also working with the Community Foundation on their development committee.
Super. Thank you. Larissa?
Hi, I'm Larissa Chadwick, and I do marketing and outreach for the New River Land Trust.
Oh, super. Kevin?
Hi, yes. My name is Kevin Berry. I am the Community Outreach Manager with the Rescue Mission of Roanoke.
Oh, great. And Brianna? Brianna, I'm not sure, or is it Brianna? And if I pronounced anyone's name incorrectly, please correct me. So, and if you don't hear me, I'll just move on. So, okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen, and that's going to make us all get a lot smaller, and you're going to see my slides, and that's always dangerous. So I love being able to see your faces, even if I can't really make eye contact with you. So I may go back and forth between the screen sharing because I really want this to be a conversation between us. Of course, at the end, there's going to be time for questions, but there's time for questions at any point, and I'm going to prompt you for some questions, but also speak up and interrupt. I know I would encourage you to speak out if you can. I'm hoping Lindsay will watch the chat for me, but I would love for this to be a conversation as much as anything, and it's hard to do conversations in chat and conversations on the screen at the same time. So, but we will get through all of your questions, and we'll roll into this, and I will share my screen. Okay, so I'm assuming you can see this, so we're going to get rolling in here. Today, just sort of repeating what I said, what I am hoping we are going to do is have a conversation and learn from each other, develop some ideas for you, and just build a little bit of confidence and make you feel comfortable in the work that you're doing in terms of connecting with the media. And I'm going to run through some of these slides pretty quickly because I'm going to spend more time at the end on some of the sections where we would talk about the actual media outreach, because I think a lot of the things at the beginning are good to cover, but maybe things that you are already familiar with and know. So, and this is sort of the order that we're going to, the things that we're going to cover today, these 4 areas, why we do it, what types of stories are good, how do you develop that, how do you do the actual outreach once you've secured, some interest from a journalist, what do you do? And then, as I mentioned before, we have a story that from Literacy Volunteers that Linda and her team at Literacy Volunteers worked on that I think is good to share, that illustrates some of the points that we're going to cover today. So, but before I get into the why, what I would love to do is hear from you guys right now. Who has experience working with the media? I want to know, just tell me about it and tell me what was good and what was bad. And also, I will say, I'm not afraid of silence. Like, pregnant pauses are what journalists are made of. And I was a journalist for a long time, so I'll sit here and you can all feel awkward until somebody talks.
Well, I worked with the media when I was with Downtown Blacksburg and also now with the Y. And I tend to bombard them with everything that we have going on because we think everything we're doing is wonderful. The good part of that is when the media agree and help us with some promotion. And the bad part is when there's dead silence and we don't get anything.
Right.
So I don't know if that's
Right. Well, and I think I would love to hear, that's great, Lorraine, thank you. And I would love to hear as we go on what you've learned that makes the difference between when they respond and when they don't respond. And the other thing that I would say that we'll say throughout this is some of this is completely out of your control, because a lot of what's determining what a journalist is going to cover is going to be based on what's happening on the particular day that you're trying to get them to do something, what's happening on the news, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really good. Who else?
I can add that it's been really interesting going from Virginia Tech to the Community Foundation because Virginia Tech is such a huge entity and we have hundreds of communicators, at least dozens. There's a lot of us, right? And it's all, I was just one communicator embedded in a department. And so I was never sending out a press release. It was folks like Michael and other people. And so when we would be have TV folks or other people reach out about an interview, it'd usually go through someone like Michael or someone else to kind of trickle down and they'd help arrange it. And so being at the foundation, there's 3 people working here. And so we're managing all that. And so it's, you know, trying to channel my inner Michael and inner Mark Ozarski. But it's just really interesting of trying to see who's going to bite on something that you're sending out and trying to figure out how to develop relationships with reporters. And when people are so busy trying to figure that out. And I know there's so many more people kind of pushing PR things than there are reporters. So trying to find that balance of, hey, I don't want to bother you, but I think what we're doing is really cool.
Right.
So it's been an interesting thing to, sometimes it's successful, like Lorraine said, and sometimes you're like, can anyone hear me?
Right. Well, you just reminded me, Lindsay, all of you have, yes, at Virginia Tech, we have some specialized roles and often when I do media trainings, I'm targeting it to people. And actually one of the steps is for them to get in touch with our team. You don't, in most cases, you don't have a media relations team. So you're not only doing all the steps of finding the stories and helping us develop the assets, all things that we're going to talk about, you're actually doing the media outreach, you're actually doing the interviews, so you're having to do it all. So that's why we're going to cover a lot, but that's a really good point because in larger organizations, and so that makes it harder for you. Anybody else have experience with the media or things that you didn't see or that you want to make sure we talk about today?
I have one thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of experience in working directly with the media. It would always go through someone else in our company, but we also think that local relationships are important. And so specifically in the western part of the state or other groups and reaching out to the media locally might be something I'd be interested in, how to develop those relationships.
Awesome. Yep, that's super. And that I think we will cover that. But again, if there's other things that we don't, so that's great. Okay, so you know this, you guys all know this. This is why you're here on this call. Why are you going to reach out to the media? Increase your awareness, raise money, attract volunteers, engage clients and partners. Here's my secret for you. The media really needs you. You may feel like that there's like this void and that there's getting so much more than they can do and you don't hear back from them, and that's that is actually true. And I've lived that. I live that every day. And as somebody who does a lot of media outreach, you have to have a thick skin and you get rejected all the time. But the reality is newsrooms are getting smaller and smaller, especially local newsrooms. When I left the Roanoke Times in about 8 years ago, there were over 80 journalists in that newsroom. They have 20 now. TV newsrooms are not they're not shrinking as much, but they're adding shows. Channel 7 now has morning news shows that run from 5 to 9 a.m. They start their afternoon news at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and run until 6:30. They start their late news at 10 o'clock and run till 11:30. They have like 10 hours of coverage a day that they have to fill. They need good stories. You guys all have great stories to do. And so it's just connecting them to the stories. The other thing I would say is people come to me all the time and they want me to pitch their story. I don't like that term because it sounds to me like I'm going to convince somebody to do a story that they aren't interested in doing. My job is to take stories to people that they're going to want to do, and knowing who the right people are and what they are and what their needs are. And so it's making those connections, and that's what I think is most important for you guys. And I think that that's what you can really do. That doesn't mean it's easy or it's always successful. So they need you. They need your content. They need your stories. So telling your story, I'm just going to stop here. I'll walk through, but you guys tell me what makes a good story. What are reporters looking for? What are you thinking of when you're trying to get somebody to cover something? What are you putting in front of them?
I mean, I think for us as nonprofits, you want to kind of the more happier notes. How is this benefiting the community? Who benefited from this directly, a special interest of a family or something like that, to highlight, because the news is hard and there's a lot of hard and tough stuff out there, but the work we're doing would hopefully be, happy, beneficial. And so that's where, I go to them, I'm like, I got a great, thing for you, because, this is where it's children. We love children, so like, let's shine a light on it,
Absolutely. 100% showing that impact in the community. What else?
Try to show them something different, because there's a lot of competition out there.
Yes.
And I will say that Virginia Tech is the biggest competition to get on the news because it's such a huge and important entity to the area that if something's going on at Tech, we pretty much know that our event's just going to fade away into the background or something like that. But yeah, trying to get something different and fresh out there to attract attention, I think.
Yeah, that sounds really hard. Because there is such a big entity here and we're putting out so much content. I sometimes feel like that, you might be in a better position of trying to almost frame it as you're giving an alternative to what's happening at Virginia Tech. So that's interesting. So yeah, you guys have hit on the main things. Sort of making me care is really problem benefit solution, making me care. Really thinking about that headline of what's the point of this story, and then going out. When I talk about facts, examples, and anecdotes, what do I mean?
I think people want numbers sometimes, how many people, what percentage are benefiting, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, just the facts of what is
absolutely
the event doing, things like that.
The facts are going to make them get hooked on the story, and if they see growth or impact, or we served this many people last year. But then to take it a step further, especially if you're working with broadcast media, what I would highly encourage you to do is look for ways to put a face on that story. And some of you are challenged, I think, probably because you're working with clients, and many of you are working in underserved communities, and some of you are working with kids. And I know that it's not always that easy to put your clients out there, but look for ways. You still have to look for ways to give them a human impact with that story. Has anybody had success with doing that?
At the rescue mission, we have had some success with especially our recovery program. We have a recovery program here where individuals have spent some time, they're eager to tell their story. So getting those individuals to go on the news and talk about their stay at the mission has been pretty successful. But what we found success in as well is just keeping the message simple. Is that, that when you simplify that and it's a simple message, it makes it a simple story for that reporter, and that can be very clear and concise and make it easier for them to not only edit it and put it on air. So it makes it, but it also makes it so they want to call you back and do more stories.
I love it. See, this is why conversation in these is so great, because you guys are you're telling all the things that we're going to talk about in this. So you're absolutely 100% right. Perfect. That's great. So yeah, telling your story, the different things to think about. Timeliness is a big deal for newsrooms. They want to know sort of, why do the story now? So when we talk in the case study at the end, the story we're going to talk about is actually hooked to Giving Tuesday, which is coming up. Giving Tuesday in itself is not that interesting of a story for a journalist because it's such a large thing, and so it's hard to cover it in a large way. But how can you make that a more simple story, a smaller story, a more personal story, is one way to think about it. So that, but you're using Giving Tuesday to create that timeliness. And then we've already talked a little bit about problem and solution, showing that impact, like this is something that's happening in our community, and because of our services, we're helping to fix it. So those are really good things. Personal anecdotes and emotional appeal really work together, because it's by putting that face on it that you're making people care. And then finally, and this is as much for your own benefit as it is for the journalists, it's that call to action to make them watch the viewers, and what should they do? What do we want them to do when they see or hear or read this story that you've done? So let's talk about what you need when you're doing the story. Written summary, like talk to me a little bit about how you what ways do your organizations use to tell your stories? The websites, blogs, social media, what are you doing? Are you newsletters? How are you getting word out about what your impact is to your own clients and to your own stakeholders?
Well, I will say that we do everything that you just said. So we have an e-newsletter, we have an actual newsletter, and we are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Okay.
And so, other than that, we have a news story here and there. And the last news story I did, actually, it didn't even get aired. It was along with, part of what the event that we were part of, but my part did not get aired. So I was a little perturbed about that, but it happens.
Yeah, that's frustrating. But you're exactly right. You're already doing a lot of storytelling on your own channels and your own platforms. And that's a big step towards what you're going to need to connect with media. A lot of times people think about needing a news release, but you don't always need a news release. You don't need a formal written news release in most cases if your goal is to get a story, what you need is a short summary that you can use to do some media outreach. That doesn't mean news releases don't have a place. If you have an event that's upcoming that you want to get out to a lot of different places and you want to get it on next 3 days and you want to get it in the calendar for the New River Valley, Roanoke edition, you know, that's where a news release is going to come into effect, and you're going to want to send that out to a lot of people, but you're not really expecting there to be a lot of engagement with that news release and expecting a lot of people to contact you back. You want to give them all the information they need to write up that calendar listing. And I would think that's the value of a news release. The value of having a short summary is that that's what you're going to use when you're reaching out to media to sort of give them, because you know, what I hear all the time from journalists is you know, I never get the worst thing that I can do is overwhelm somebody with trying to tell them the whole story in an email when I'm just trying to get them interested in doing it. So you're already doing a lot of it. And I just can't stress enough the need for visuals, photos, and video. And the reason that's so important is because all these newsrooms are really strapped for resources, and so they will use what you give them. Who can tell me B-roll? Don't forget the B-roll is on here. What's B-roll? Who uses it? Does anybody want to talk about that? Does that term mean anything to anybody?
Well, B-roll is when media will come and ask to film a certain space or the outside of your building or whatever it is that they can use as filler during their broadcast. And yeah, I'll take a second here because I did want to mention something that's been successful for us at the mission, because B-roll can be a bit annoying sometimes. It's like they're asking to go places you weren't expecting them to go. They're wanting to spend more time than you really have because they got to get the right shot. But something that we actually found success in at the mission is that once a quarter we'll send out an email to new reporters at the stations, and we will invite them to come and tour the rescue mission, and they can bring a camera person along to get updated B-roll. And that's just a way for us to knock it all out at once, so that if a reporter is like, okay, well, thanks for the clip that you gave us, now we want to get B-roll, it's kind of like, well, you already got that. So
nice.
It's actually been really successful.
What a great tip. I love that. And yeah, I think that B-roll is so important for for them to have it on file, and also for stories that they may not be planning to send a reporter to, that you're going to do for an event. For instance, if you have an event coming up and you want to get them get that event mentioned on their morning newscast, they can read over an item about your event, but if they have some B-roll to play behind that, it just makes it feel more substantial to them, and they want to have it. So what I would say is and B-roll, you know, you've all have iPhones or you have smartphones in your pockets. They're good quality. They're good enough. Believe it or not, you can shoot your own B-roll, and you know, there are some tips that you can find. And you know, the reason I want this to be a conversation is because most of what we're talking about today, there's plenty of resources online. There's a lot of stuff out there online to tell you how to shoot, you know, the right kind of video. But just think about that when you're having an event, and you only need a minute and a half, 2 minutes of B-roll. You do not send them 15 minutes of video. They don't want that much. If you can do what was suggested and have them come to your event, that's harder to do. I mean, the rescue mission is, you know, also a big player in Roanoke, and having worked in Roanoke for a long time, and it's really strong B-roll. So that's an awesome idea. So thank you. It's great. And then the last thing, interview participants. What does that mean? It means that if you're planning to pitch your story to an outlet, know in advance who you're planning to have talk to that reporter if they say they want to do the story. Because don't be surprised if they say, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do a story. Do you have a student? Do you have a client? Do you have can your president talk to us?" And then you're scrambling. It makes it a little more challenging. And when you're thinking about those participants, think about the fact that you could get asked to come on to a morning newscast at 6 in the morning. So more TV stations love to do morning live shots to preview events. And it doesn't matter if they're standing in the dark outside your building. It feels more substantial to them to say, we're here today. And then they're going to want somebody to come on and talk to them about that event. So that if you can pitch that, those morning reporters have to come up with something almost every single day to do. So that's one tip there too. So yeah, we've already gotten into this a little bit. So we're going to talk about connecting with the media. Where do you start? We've already touched on this. What medium are we going to go for? I'm curious, like when I say medium, of course, you all know I'm talking about, is it going to be on TV? Is it going to be on the radio? Is it going to be in the newspaper? Is it going to be on a website? So I'm curious, what do you think are the most effective ways of reaching your audiences? What do you, when you think about where you want a story to go, where do you want it to go?
So real quick, a tool that I use sometimes to identify who our audience is Facebook. So I'll go and take a look at who follows us on Facebook. And it's usually going to be middle-aged to older women, honestly. But so what that means is that that's you start tailoring your message towards that audience. And so we're not going to be looking to host an auto show at the rescue mission, or even highlight that, but something about a family or whatever it is, that might speak more to the audience that cares about what we do and that carries that message back to their family.
Right. Does anybody have an instance where, are you guys thinking about this? Are you thinking about how you target something to a specific reporter, to a specific show?
I would say from the viewpoint of someone who's spent most of his life on news desks, it's very important to send your release to the outlet that's most likely to be interested in it. There's no point in sending a business story to the city desk in most cases, or of course, since I left the business, few newspapers even have a business department. So maybe I should roll that back.
Where did you work, John?
Most recently, the Miami Herald.
Awesome. So you're probably more of an expert in this than me. So please pipe up.
I wouldn't say that, Michael. But I certainly appreciate the difficulty of getting noticed.
Yeah. That's great. You're exactly right. I think trying to find the right person in the right desk and make that connection is your greatest asset. And that's we're not going to be able to cover every single possibility with there today, but just think about those different, especially with local broadcast television. They have these different shows, and the morning shows have a different goal. The 3 o'clock show on WDBJ7 in Roanoke, which just started like last week, is called 7 at Home, I think. And it's very much aimed at women. It's very much aimed at feature stories and lifestyle stories. They want people coming into the studio to do interviews, which frankly is a big ask. And it is very, like, we've been working with them, trying to get them to do a story. Now, they're trying to get us to do a story with them. And I can't, it's hard for me to convince a researcher that they're going to drive to Roanoke and spend an hour at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday to do a local TV station. And they need that content. So, and that's a different opportunity. So thinking about that and thinking about your guests and people that can really engage with them in a conversational format is a way to approach that one. So just be selective in thinking about where you're trying to get your story done. I'm not going to walk through everything on this slide, but this is just a little sliver of all the ways, and it goes. You know, we've talked a fair amount about Roanoke TV stations today, but in many cases, you're going to go, if you're based in the New River Valley, there's still a lot of local outlets that you're probably going to want to engage with to get some of your stories out. The local newspapers, the Roanoke Times still has a once a week section that goes to just the New River Valley. And of course, all of these newsrooms have web presence. So you want your stories on their websites, so that then you have another asset that you can use to share on your social media and lift it up that way. So I picked out 4 people, and I actually have another list to share as well, but I picked these 4 people because they are 4 people that specifically are assigned to and based here, and they're not the only ones, but in terms of broadcast TV, there are only, I think, only two reporters that are based in the New River Valley right now. One's Kelsey and one's Andrew. And between the 2 of them, I can tell you they have different viewpoints on how they cover stories. And Kelsey has to do a story every single day. I probably hear from Kelsey 4 times a week. She's just working. And so she needs good ideas. And she's not always going to do your story, but ideas are her currency. She's just somebody. Roxy Todd's brand new to WVTF. I don't know if any of you knew Robbie Harris. Robbie was here for many years. He's done some great stories. She actually did the story that we're going to talk about at the end. But Roxy's brand new, and she's just getting to know this area. So this opportunity, to come out, and don't think of it as a lost opportunity. This idea, I mean, I loved the idea, Kevin, of having new reporters come out and see your organization. There is great benefit to engaging people even when they don't do stories. So think about those opportunities to invite people to events and get them engaged in that way. And then Christina Coleman at the Roanoke Times is not a reporter, but she is your contact. If you want to get your listing in, you want to get a short write-up on your event, email it to Christina, because she's the person that controls that community content, and they basically will take your news release. And in most cases, I think they've gotten a little tighter on their space, so they don't run quite as much, and the photos aren't quite as big, but that's a way to get them in there. I'm going to share this with you. You guys don't have to. I can share this document with all of you, but I put it up here. This is a group of journalists that I invited to an event we did last summer, and when Lynn and I were talking earlier this week about this presentation, we were just sort of, I'm reluctant to share this only because it's going to change. These will turn over in a month. Most, half these names won't be as valuable to you because journalists move around a lot. The reason I'm putting it up here is because it helps me talk about the different roles in different newsrooms. Assignment editors are your friends in TV newsrooms. Assignment editors are the people that control what stories are done. If you don't know what reporter to go to, an individual assignment editor is a great place to start. They're going to see it. They're going to respond to you. It doesn't mean they're going to do it, but they will usually engage with you if you send them a direct email. Again, they all need your stories, your ideas. So I've talked about Kelsey. And then when you see digital news reporter next to a name, all these TV stations have websites. They are writing up stories directly from news releases. They're doing web stories that don't ever get on broadcast. And there's value in those stories. So don't just take advantage of that opportunity. And then I'll also just take a minute to talk about Cardinal News. I don't know, are you guys familiar with Cardinal News?
I think so far, your best contact at Cardinal News is the editor.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, John, if people are here. I am very familiar with Cardinal News because both I have professional relationships with most of the staff, but I didn't know Cardinal News is a brand new nonprofit news outlet. As we've talked about, newsrooms are having, especially traditionally print newsrooms, are having lots of financial challenges. And so the business model doesn't work anymore. So what you're seeing more and more is nonprofit newsrooms. And so these are going to be your peers in many ways. They're writing grants, they're raising money, all in the goal of providing really valuable news coverage to our community. So Dwayne Yancey is the editor, and he's based out of Roanoke right now, but they cover an area that spans from Danville to Wise County. But they want good stories. They need good stories, and they have a slew of freelancers that they're out there doing. So they will do your stories if they have the information. So I put that out there. So I'm going to pause right here for a minute. Any other thoughts, questions, about reaching out to reporters? What's been successful for you guys?
You brought up a point that I've noticed happens a lot. You start to develop a relationship where one particular reporter is like, yeah, call me anytime, I'm coming up to do your story, and that's going great. And then suddenly they're gone. There's a lot of movement. I know we're kind of a small local news area, so it's sort of a stepping stone along the path, but it is frustrating when you just have that relationship going and then suddenly that reporter's gone, because that really helps you when you've got at least one or two that just want to hear what you have to tell them. So
absolutely, it is more challenging. And I mean the Roanoke Times is a good example. I mean, in 15 years ago, they had about 15 people based in the New River Valley just covering this area. I think they're down to two reporters now covering all of the New River Valley. And so it's really hard to get them, and people do move around. So it's tough. Other thoughts or questions about media outreach stories, times where you thought you had reached out? Oh, let me talk about Matt for a minute again. And Matt Gentry, if you don't know Matt, if you're around downtown Blacksburg very much, you probably do know Matt. Lauren, I bet you know Matt. Matt is based in Blacksburg. He works for the Roanoke Times, and he has a big interest in, I'll just say right. You need to know Matt loves the outdoors. He loves the arts. He has, he loves community stories. He's going and he will come out and just take pictures. If it's visual, Matt will come out and take pictures at it. So, and he needs to know about things. So reaching out to Matt is a great idea.
Michael, you on the list, and I said we're getting that when we get our when we can access the PowerPoint. But you have their email addresses. I just wanted to make sure, is that the best way that they like to receive information?
Great segue. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I think email is probably your best first option. I put this on here. I started with a media list, which is where you hear a lot. People talk about PR, and they talk about developing media lists, and we do. Trust me, we do that every single day at Virginia Tech. We tailor media lists to specific stories we put out every single day, and we send them out. But people also think that I have some giant news email list at Virginia Tech that I send all our news releases to. We absolutely 100% do not. We do not, because nobody wants to get a zillion news releases from Virginia Tech. Every single piece of content we're putting out, we're trying to target to a select list of people. Now, yes, I do have a list of about 9 people that I call our core local list that we send things to, and we don't think about it. We just send it. And that also includes email addresses like news@wsls.com, news@wdbj7.com. So we do send things to those broad email addresses. Not if I really wanted a personal reply to it, that's not what I do. But if I'm sending out a news release, that's those event type things, that's the type of thing where I'm creating those lists. Personal emails, probably your best bet otherwise. If you have a personal relationship with a reporter and you sort of develop that to where you might, a phone call might work, a text could work. I think a text is certainly okay. Again, if you have that, texts are hard if you don't have the relationship because they're not going to know you. You're not going to be in their phone. I mean, I get texts from reporters all the time now. It goes both ways. When they need me and I'm not responding, I get texts. Hey, why haven't you gotten back to me? So both can work, but generally I start with an email, and I will often, even if it's a reporter I know well, I'll send a quick email and say, hey, I got something I think you might be interested in. Do you have time for a call? Because I think cold calls are tough. I mean, you guys probably find cold calls tough too. You probably get solicitations, you get things, and it throws you off your day a little bit. So I would not recommend cold calls.
So I agree. I think that like emails for us, especially with reporters that we don't know, if you're either doing a release or you don't have that relationship, yeah, we use that all the time. But I am a big fan of texting, actually.
Yeah.
So and it's only because what happens is that once I get one interview with a reporter, I'll be like, hey, here's the best way to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed in conversations with reporters is that they really appreciate a prompt response if it's possible, because they're working on deadlines. And if you get a reputation of getting back quickly, not only will they reach out to you for stories more often, but they'll recommend you to other reporters as somebody who gets back to them quickly. And that's been a huge benefit to the mission. I've gotten texts from random numbers being like, hey, I'm new at WDBJ. Can you do an interview? And I'm like, oh, sure. This is easy. So
that is so exactly right. And so thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's one of our goals here on a different type of story. I mean, we get asked our goal is to get our faculty members, our experts in national media. And when national media asks us for an expert, we need to get them that expert within, minutes, hours, less, it can't be days, because it's just exactly what Kevin said. They come back to us. If they know we can respond quickly, they're coming to us. So it's exactly the same way. I agree with you, Kevin. Texting is usually effective with reporters, especially if you have a relationship. It's always that balance of not spamming people and knowing the line of what is really something they're going to be interested in, and not overwhelming them with things that they're not going to be interested in. So, and it is a line. So, all right, preparing for the interview. I'm going to go through this really quick because I could do a long time on the interviews themselves, but we're going to move through this pretty quickly. It can be feel intimidating to do interviews, but I will just tell you, you're in control of that interview. I think we've talked about most of this already, so thank you. One of the big takeaways I would tell you, no matter whether you're writing your story or doing an interview, or what is it you want out there? What are your 2 to 3 talking points? Write them down, figure them out, and then say them out loud. Be prepared, conversational. Whether you're doing a broadcast interview, whether you're doing a print interview, have a conversation as much as you can. And earlier we talked about, be concise and to the point. Make it simple, and then you have the power. We had a Pulitzer Prize winner on campus yesterday. Ed Young from the Atlantic magazine was here, and he made this point. He's like, people get nervous when they're talking to me. They have all the power. If they stop talking to me, I don't have anything. Like, you don't have to answer any question that they ask you if it makes you feel uncomfortable. That being said, the more you're able to talk to them, and the more you're able to share the personal side of what you're doing, the better story you're going to get. So, and just be positive and be confident.
I'm sorry, I wanted to say one more thing, and then I'll be quiet because people are probably tired of listening to me. But I did want to say one more thing, which is I've noticed, like, when I started in my position, I was so nervous about everything that I was saying, because I was afraid that if I even said one word halfway wrong, they were going to put that on air. And what I've found, especially working at a nonprofit, is that they're not gunning for you. They're not trying to twist your words. It's like, if I'm halfway through a statement or if I say a full statement and I'm like, you know what, I didn't say that exactly right. 99 times out of 100, they're going to be like, oh, no problem. Let's do it again. So I think that's like, you always just have to remind yourself of that. They're not gunning for you.
Exactly. That's a good, thank you, Kevin. You know, you're making excellent points. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the input, and you're exactly right. They are not trying to do gotcha stories about local nonprofits in 99.9% of the cases.
And I'll just add one thing Michael advised me to do is after an interview, handing them my 2 to 3 points that I wanted to get across, typed up piece of paper, because that way, if they're going to summarize it or something, then they have something they can use and make sure that they get it right. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can hand it to them. You can send them a follow-up email to make them, get that right. And always know that the last question they're going to ask you, and I don't think I have this in a slide, but they're always going to say, what else do I need to know? What else do you want to say? And be ready for that question and have that talking point that you're going to say that, so that's there. I'm not going to read this, but I heard somebody said this earlier and we talked about it. Understand the reporter's deadline, understand the challenges that they're under, and try to meet them and help them do their job better. And that's going to get you better coverage. So summarize, make me care. Don't forget the visuals. Photos and B-roll are really important. Newsrooms will use them. Use your connections. We talked about that a lot. Practice, and know the format and know your audience. So, all right. So I would love to spend a few minutes. I know we have about 6 minutes. I completely understand in these meetings, drop off if you have to go, but Linda, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk for a minute about Freddie and how you guys did that story.
Okay, so we have an annual student volunteer recognition event, and thanks to Michael's guidance, we started taking B-roll at that event when the students were speaking. We have a speak out where they have the opportunity to talk about something they've learned or read something they've learned how to read. And so because most of our services are spread out throughout the New River Valley, it's an opportunity to capture our impact. And so we were at this recognition event, and Michael's supervisor, Tracy Vosberg, was there because her husband, Peter, is on our board and one of our tutors. And after Freddie spoke, he's the one on the left, she said, Linda, you should reach out to Robbie Harris with WVTF with this story, because Freddie was able to keep his job, and our tutor really helped him learn how to pass an exam that he needed for his job. So that's the tutor, John Hess, on the right there. And so we had Giving Tuesday coming up, and as Michael mentioned, Giving Tuesday is this huge event, and just doing a release that says, remember us on Giving Tuesday doesn't have the impact that telling a story as the hook, and then reminding people that they can support us on Giving Tuesday and help students like Freddie. That's sort of the angle that we took. And so next slide, Michael. And so I went to a workshop that the Community Foundation hosted about 5 years ago with a PR firm in Roanoke that advised us to have a blog because social media is quick and not everyone reads the email newsletters. And so when we have student success stories or like new news, like new data, 24,000 adults in New River Valley have trouble with reading, we post it on this blog, and then we can refer back to that with any kind of media outreach. And so we had the photo of him, we had the B-roll from the event. This is the blog that we posted with his success story. And then I just sent an email to Robbie Harris and just said, we're having this Giving Tuesday event. Would you be interested in doing a story about this Christiansburg town employee who was able to achieve a goal to keep his job because of our services? And then I included the blog post and the video, and a little bit about how we had the match for Giving Tuesday. And then after the email, I followed up with a phone call. And then she came, and of course, I'd already asked Freddie if he'd be willing to do it. And that is a really hard thing with nonprofits. A lot of our students are confidential, or they don't have the confidence to do something like this. So it's definitely something that we try to work on, is developing relationships with our clients so that they feel comfortable sharing the impact. And so then, she did this story that was awesome, because it talked about literacy is the greatest gift, and we were trying to get gifts, and it was pre-holiday. People walked into our office and handed us checks. We got new volunteers. So it resulted in really great impact for us.
That's awesome. And I have the story, and I was going to play it. It's about 3.5 minutes long, and I think we have about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to not play that, but I will share it out when in the slides. And so but I'm going to stop here and would love to hear any follow-up questions, comments, thoughts, things that I didn't cover that I should have covered.
Is there any difference? I've tried to connect with some of the regional magazines like Blue Ridge Outdoors and Appalachian Voices. Do you have any different tips for those kinds of outlets?
It's a great question. I think that those are hard. They're challenging, because Blue Ridge Outdoors is I'm a big fan of Blue Ridge Outdoors. Love their content. They're covering everything from Asheville to Charlottesville, and it is with a very small niche of people, and a very sharp niche of content, and a very small amount of people. So I think it is challenging to break through with that, unless if you have an outdoors event, if you have something that's really in their wheelhouse. I don't have any better advice than to going directly to the editors, but I just know that is those niche publications are pretty challenging. I don't have a great tip other than the ones I've given, but I would be curious if anybody else here on it has had success in reaching. I know Appalachian Voices, but I don't have any personal relationship in terms of dealing with them, so I don't really know.
The magazines have a longer deadline than you might imagine.
That's true.
It takes a long time to pull it together.
Yeah, that's a great thinking. Is you need to be months in advance of something if you're thinking about those. So that's true.
Michael, do you have any advice about kind of the time of day to reach out to folks that might be better, or day of the week? I feel like the answer is probably it depends, but that's one that I've kind of played around with. We had a press release recently that I was like, this is really interesting, and didn't really get much coverage. So I was like, maybe the timing was off. Maybe I should follow up with folks, but don't want to badger them. So I kind of go back and forth on that.
Yeah, I don't think there's any perfect answer to that. I think thinking in terms of newsrooms, generally beginnings of days and ends of days are the busier times. Most newsrooms have a morning news meeting at some point, and then towards the end of the day, they're either putting newscasts together or trying to get stories done to get them posted to get out the door. I think most of the personal meetings that I have with news directors and assignment editors happen around 1 PM. That's their slowest time of the day. But in terms of sending news releases out, we send a lot of ours out at the same time. Our emails get really full at between 6 and 8 AM. Don't we all get a bunch of email newsletters and things like that about that time? There's a reason for that. And that's because, that's when people are starting their day and they are kind of looking. So, and if I want to get something in front of a news director for daily coverage, we definitely need to get it to them before that morning meeting. If I really think I want them to do it, though, I'm connecting in a different way to make sure that they see it. But I wish there was some magic thing about telling you exactly when to send a news release. But I think always give yourself a little bit of lead time too. And the other thing I would say is, don't send a news release if you're not ready to have a reporter do the story. The most frustrating thing for a reporter is to get a news release or something from an organization call up and say, hey, I'd love to come do that story, and then be told, oh, well, oh, wow, really? Well, we can do it 2 weeks from now, or, and they may still do it, but most of the time they're looking for a pretty quick turn. So. I know we've gone over. I'm happy to stay. I'm not in any rush, so I'm happy to continue this conversation, but I also respect all of your time. So.
Yeah, I think this has been incredibly helpful, and we're happy to keep the Zoom open if folks have additional questions. But we just really appreciate all of you sharing time this morning, but especially Michael and Linda for your case study as well. That sounds like an awesome story. So we just really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your time.